chapter 8. Okay. Let's start here. I'm going to jump back into the book of Matthew in a minute and read some other part of it. Anyway, it starts here in verse 40. It says, "Now when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus, a ruler of the synagogue, came to and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come to his house, because of his only daughter, a girl about 12, was dying. As Jesus was on his way, the crowd was almost crushed him. And a woman that was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. So she came up behind him, touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. 'Who touched me?' Jesus asked. When they all denied it, Peter said, 'Master.'" Of course, Peter's going to talk. He's always talking. I think it reminds me of myself. People are crowding and pressing against you. But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know the power has gone out of me." Then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at the feet. And in the presence of all the people, she told why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to the daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." While Jesus was still speaking, someone came from the house of Jairus, the synagogue ruler. "Your daughter is dead," he said. "Don't bother the teacher anymore." Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid, just believe and she will be healed." When he arrived at her house, Jairus, he did not let anyone go in except Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. Meanwhile, all the people were wailing and mourning for her. "Stop wailing," Jesus said. "She's not dead, but asleep." They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But he took her by the hand. "My child, get up." Her spirit returned at once. She stood up, and Jesus told them to give her something to eat. Her parents were astonished, but he ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. Okay. Now, anybody has ever read the most popular book in the Bible, Leviticus? Leviticus is a really popular book in the Bible, okay? I had to try to read Leviticus several times. I had to stop and get it because I was falling asleep. I mean, it's pretty basic, but chapter 15 talks about the cleansing of a woman after having a menstrual cycle. Okay? And back then, you were spiritually unclean during your cycle. You could not touch anybody, you could not be around people. You just had to go off and be by yourself. And there was a ritual you had to do all the time to get cleanse yourself. Okay? And this woman had bled. She started bleeding, and then a week later, she was still bleeding. 2 weeks later, she was bleeding. 3 weeks later, she was bleeding. A month later, she was bleeding. 6 months later, she was bleeding. A year, 12 years, this woman had bled. Okay? And something that Luke said, don't say here, that Mark says, if you read the book of Mark about this, Mark says that she spent all her money, everything that she had, going to doctors. Why does Luke not mention this? Because Luke is a doctor. And he don't make other doctors look bad. Okay? Because he's like, why did she come to me and let me heal her, you know? Okay. But the thing about this is this woman, she had been unclean for 12 years, which means she couldn't be around nobody. She couldn't be around her family. She couldn't go to church. She couldn't go to synagogue. She couldn't go nowhere because she was unclean. What's one of the worst things that you can tell a woman? What's one of the worst things? You nasty. You get away from me. That's basically what they was telling her. For 12 years, this woman had been called unclean from everybody. She couldn't touch anybody. She couldn't be around anybody. And as a matter of fact, they compared the menstrual cycle to a dead body. Because like Jesus wasn't supposed to touch her, and he wasn't supposed to touch this little girl that was dead. But Jesus was not a Pharisee. He was not bound by the laws of Moses. He was not bound by the laws of Leviticus. Why? Because he wrote the laws. He made the laws. And this woman, she was so filled with shame that this was her only hope. And she couldn't even be in this crowd. She was not supposed to be in this crowd around people. So, and there was like 500 people is what they said. I can't remember where I did that. For some reason that number popped in my mind. So there was 500 reasons why she should not be there. And yet she goes up there and touches the hem of his cloak. Looking for a miracle. Looking for a miracle. You know, there's one preacher I follow. He's pretty good. He's pretty big. And but he really preaches the Bible. I love guys that are big that preach the Bible and teach the Bible. His name's Joby Martin. Okay? And I'm going to tell you a story of what he said that happened to him. I don't have a story like this in my life. Because, you know, sometimes God blesses you with a lot of stories, things that happen sometimes. But anyway, Joby Martin was working. He was a teenage, he taught a teenage class. He preached to teenagers in this big church. And he was working in a gym. And he was one making smoothies and all this stuff like that right there. But anyway, Joby got up there, and the owner of the place was trying to make some money. You know, it's a business. You're going to try to make money. Well, anyway, it just so happened there was a strip club right across the street. And the owner went to there and told the women they could come over and work out for free. Why? Because he was charging $50 a head to the guys that wanted to come in the gym and work out with him. Okay? Which was pretty smart. Well, anyway, these girls, Joby was always working on his messages and stuff while he was at the gym, which makes sense. You're sitting there, why not work with God? And he said he got to know these strippers. They come over there and start talking to him and stuff. What are you doing? He's telling them. And he said, about 50 times I invited them to go to church with me. And they would always, no. And finally this one said, yeah, I'll go with you this Sunday. And he's like, wait a minute. After he started thinking about it, he's like, oh, this might not be good. You know, I don't know how I'm going to present the stripper in church. Because this is a pretty tight-knit church I go to, big church. So anyway, he's like, well, you know, it starts pretty early, you know. I don't understand. You could, I'm going to make it. Well, you know, it's kind of, he's trying to make the backpedal on it. But she was determined she was going to go. So Sunday morning, she said, well, I'm going to pick you up. So Sunday morning, she picked him up in her white Corvette. Okay, had her daughter with her. And so they snuggled in the car. He drives the car, gets to church, goes to church. Well, this woman is wearing like a tight dress. And kind of revealing. And so anyway, he goes to the church and he notices everybody starts looking and staring and everything else. And then he says that after church, he said that he got up there and he was walking out, and one of the deacons called him. He said, hey, Joby, I need to talk to you. We need to preach to a pastor's office. So he goes there, and the deacon tells him, he said, how dare you bring somebody like that to church? He said, this church is here to protect our children and us away from people like that. And Joby was just a young preacher, and he didn't want to jeopardize his job, so he's like, I'm sorry, I won't do it again. He said, he wished he would have stood up and said something different, but he didn't. Well, anyway, so he walks out to the car, and there's this, her name, he was calling her Sunshine. There's Sunshine out there at the car wearing his nice Ray-Bans, and he walks up to her, and you can see that she's crying. And he said, what's going on? She said, that was about me, wasn't it? And he said he made up some kind of, she's like, no, it was something different. He said it was a casserole conflict. But anyway, he said on the way home, it was the quietest he ever heard. There was no silence. And keep in mind now, most strippers take some kind of medication, alcohol, whatever it is they do before they go out there and strip in front of these guys. These dirty men going in there, and they have to medicate themselves to go out there and strip their clothes off in front of these guys. And he said, he asked her, he said, so what'd you think about church? She said, I have never been so embarrassed in my life. So embarrassed in my life. Somebody that goes up there week in and week out, takes their clothes off and dances up on the stage, was more embarrassed by going to church than she was doing her job. And that's what this woman right here, the issue of blood, is facing. Everybody's against her. Everybody's ashamed of her. Nobody wants to be around her. Why? She can't control it. It wasn't something she'd done. It wasn't like it's good the Samaritan woman at the well with 5 husbands and one on the way. It was something that she could not control. She could not control what was going on with her body. But yet society shunned her away from everybody. They shunned her away because something that she could not control. And that's what churches do nowadays. We shun people away because we think they don't belong here. Oh, you're too much of a sinner. You're too much of this. You don't belong here. You belong out in the street with everybody else that you're hanging out with. That's the kind of high-class churches that we have nowadays. Somebody comes in here and stinks, we don't want to sit by them. I had a friend, I'm not going to say her name, but I had a friend when I started coming to church here. I used to sit beside her every Sunday I sat beside her when I wasn't preaching. Then one time she had a stroke. And she couldn't walk anymore, so they had to wheel her in a wheelchair. And somebody was taking care of her, and they wasn't doing a good job of it. And they wheeled her in one Sunday morning right beside me, and I could smell something. And it wasn't pleasant. I could have scooted over. I could have said, hey, I got to go get some coffee and sit somewhere else. But I didn't. You know why? She's my friend. She was my friend. But that's the thing about churches, is we look at stuff. And the thing I'm saying this, I love this right here, talking about 2 events going on at one time. Jairus is a ruler of the synagogue, okay? He is a very powerful man. He walked up to Jesus with an entourage of people. He didn't walk by himself. He walked with probably 30, 40 soldiers walking with him. Because ain't nobody going to touch him. And he walked up to Jesus and got down on his hands and knees and said, my daughter's dying. This powerful man went to Jesus and went down on his hands and knees. That's what church people need to do. They need to realize how powerless they are in life and get on their hands and knees and say, God, forgive me for judging people. That's right, amen. God, take this judgment away from me. Now, who would I think I am that I'm better than somebody? I can look at them and say, you know what? I'm better than you. What does it say about that? Before you try to remove the speck out of your brother's eye, remove the plank from yours. We don't do that. We walk around this big old 2x4 in our faces, pointing, blaming, doing this, that. That's what this churches do. Churches are just full of hypocrites that just judge people all the time that can't have sympathy in their heart saying, what can I do to make it better for this person? Besides talking about them behind their back. That's what we do. Does God want us to do that? No. This woman of God came to Jesus to be healed. That's what we need to do. We need to go to Jesus and say, Jesus, what is it inside of me that I have to get out? What can I give to you to make me a better person? A better Christian? A child of God, a God-fearing child that loves my Father. Jairus had it all. He's a rich man. He had a big house. He had soldiers. He probably had, I don't know what he had. But he had a comfortable living. And he dropped down on his hands and knees because why? He loved his daughter. I know people that don't love their children. I've seen fathers get up there and sign their rights away to their kids because their mom was being difficult during a divorce. It's like, what kind of father are you? You help bring that child into this world, and you're going to sign your rights away because the mother gives you a hard time. Life is not easy. It's very difficult. We have to go through this life day after day after day after day and watch people hurt us, people betray us, people lie to us. But if we start looking like Jairus and realize no matter how much power we have in this world, or we think we have, okay, no matter how much power you think you have, you know what? You're one heartbeat away from meeting Jesus. Your heart can stop beating at any time, and you're going to meet Jesus no matter how powerful you think you are. The guy that had all them barns, he's like, I'm going to tear these barns down and build bigger ones. Why? Because I'm going to have a bigger crop next year. And Jesus said, nope, I'm calling you home tonight. One heartbeat. This woman with 12 years suffered, went to all the doctors, spent all her money, everything she had trying to be healed. Isn't that us? Isn't that what we do? Don't we go every direction, every way possible? We run here, we run there, we talk to this, we talk to that. We try to heal ourselves about, the self-help books nowadays, a multi-million-dollar business for people trying to tell you how to live a better life, how you can be a better person. And all we got to do is look at this book right here. This is a better life right here. If you want a better life, open this book up and read it and apply it to your life. Okay, so I was going to read on Matthew. Jump over Matthew real quick. Book of Matthew. It's going to be on chapter 9. Right here, chapter 9, verse 1 says, Jesus stepped into the boat, crossed over, and came into his own town. Some men brought him a paralytic, laying on a mat. When Jesus saw their faith, he said to the paralytic, "Take heart, son, your sins are forgiven." At this time, some of the teachers of the law said to themselves, this fellow is blaspheming. Knowing their thoughts, Jesus said, before I say that, that's what a lot of people do, is when people start using God, using the Word of God, they say, oh man, this guy thinks he's holy or something like that. But Jesus said, why do you entertain evil thoughts in your hearts? Which is easier to say, your sins are forgiven, or stay, get up and walk? But so that you know that, that the Son of Man has the authority on earth to forgive sins. Now, that's what Jesus, a lot of people like right here, a lot of these people in the crowd, when they saw this woman with a blood issue coming up there to Jesus, and Jesus is telling them which one's easier, to heal her? To heal her? Or just send her on her way? And that's what a lot of us do in society nowadays. We try to say, well, I really want to help you, but just move on to the next guy. You know? Move on to the next guy. You're somebody else's problem. You're not my problem. You're somebody else's problem. That's what us as a society do nowadays. We just want the easiest fix to the problem and not let it not be ours. You know, I told you the story about the guy that was terminally ill with cancer, and somebody put him on a Greyhound. I'm assuming the family put him on a Greyhound. He lived upstate somewhere, Illinois or somewhere. They sent him to they're by Mineral Wells. Didn't have no family or nothing else, so they just sent him off. Because that's what families do sometimes, you know. They put them in a nursing home or whatever. Oh, yeah, you're going to be better off here, you know. Well, anyway, this guy was in Mineral Wells. Well, there's a guy that found him somehow. God led him to him. God led him to this man. And this man started searching for a house. Couldn't find a house anywhere. Finally, bam, popped up Quanah, Texas. He got a house at the housing authority. And he brought him down here. He moved him in. He went and bought a brand new TV, couch, bed, washer and dryer, all the essentials he needed. Bought it all out of his own pocket. And then, Mineral Wells is a really good drive for me, like 3.5 hours, something like that. And anyway, this man, him and his family came down every weekend. He cooked out with this man. Didn't know him from Adam. But he came down there every weekend to cook for him. He'd cook for him and visit with him and entertain him. And then he would drive home until he found a place. Finally found a place after about 6 months. He found a place in close to Mineral Wells that he could put him in. And then he told me, he said, you know what? I donated everything in this house to the church. He didn't want to take none of it. He gave it all to the church for the garage sales. And well, anyway, that man owed him nothing. Nothing. But yet, that's what true Christians do. They go out of their way to help people. And that's what Jesus did right here. He had to, because look, this is how I put today's society. Today's society is right here. You have a rich man walk through that door, and you have a woman with blood walk through that door. What society going to choose? They're going to jump on that rich man. Oh yeah, boy, he's tired of the church. Boy, he might buy some bus. He might do this. He might do that. Come on in here, brother. And what do? We shun away the woman with blood issues. It's like, she's somebody else's problem. She's not Bethel Baptist's problem. That's what churches do nowadays. They shun people away. They take the rich in, no matter how corrupt they are, whatever it is, they take them in and they say, well, we'll take them because of the money. But if you ain't got enough, that's the reason it says it. She spent everything she had. She spent everything she had to get healed. And so she was broke. So that's the reason it says in this. A lot of people don't look at it that way. That's the reason this event in the Bible talks about a very wealthy man and a broke woman. And who did God heal first? Jesus took time. She could have touched his cloak and walked off and she'd been healed. He said, she's good. No, he took time to stop. You know, the guy's daughter was dying in everybody else's eyes. Jesus knew what was going on. He stopped and focused on that woman right there, gave her all the attention. Jesus did that. Why? Because of her faith. And that's what we need to have when it comes to us situations where we jump and we hear people, whatever it is they're doing, you know. Because I know if I go to breakfast out there, if I go to breakfast in the morning with the old men out there, you know, guess what I'm going to hear about all day long? I'm going to hear about the gossip around town. What's happening, what's doing this, what's doing that. You know? And just to prove it, I walked in the lumber yard the other day, walked in there, and by amazement, the owner's there. He looks at me and like, what are you doing here? I said, what do you mean? He said, man, you're supposed to be getting care flied out or in the ER or dead. I'm like, do what? He said, yeah, I heard you got really hurt really bad. My back hurts a little bit, but I don't think I'm going to care flied out. And then I went back about an hour later, and I guess him and his wife had a talk. His wife was there again. And she saw me, she same reaction. Like, oh my God, what are you doing here? What do you mean? She's like, you're supposed to be dead, care flight, or in the ER, one of the two, but you got hurt really bad. Does it look like I need to go to the ER? No. Why? Because people want to have stuff to talk about. What they don't know, they make up. Why? Because they want to just keep letting the devil get in their ear and just make them feel whatever they want to feel. Sometimes people feel happy by cutting people down. This woman with the issue of blood, they could have just easily pushed her away because it's in the Bible. You don't believe me? Read Leviticus 15. read it. When you look at the top of it, it talks about that, how to deal with blood among disciples. And yet they could have pushed her away biblically, but they didn't. Jesus took her and brought her and healed her. And that's what he does to us. When we bring issues to him, we ask God, please heal me. Heal me, and by your faith, he will heal you. Because the thing is you can take dirty and put it on clean, and it makes clean dirty. But you take God, Jesus, and put Jesus on dirty, and he makes it clean. Because that's what kind of God we have. He's a very clean God that loves us and wants us to have a clean soul, a clean spirit, and a clean mouth. Quit having these potty mouths and whatever we're doing with that. That's the reason they talk about the tongue being so dangerous. Would bow your heads. Always ask this time if anybody's never accepted Jesus into their life. You want to just pray with you, whatever it is. You want to come remember.